I may not be a food scientist or a nutritionist or a medical professional, but if you have picky eaters, I hope you will watch this video, because while I am no expert, I have been a picky eater myself, and I am raising kids, which can be some of the pickiest eaters that we are cooking meals for. So I'm gonna share with you some of my thoughts on this and some ideas for how to feed your household when you are trying to feed picky eaters. A few weeks back, I put up a community post on my channel page over on YouTube, or here on YouTube, since you're here watching, asking my viewers what they thought their biggest obstacle was, their biggest hurdle to overcome when it comes to preparing meals for their families. And I was actually really surprised at the results. The option that was picked more than any other, more than budget constraints or time constraints, was finding recipes or meals that their entire household would eat. And over the years, there have been lots of comments left on my channel pertaining to picky eaters, people who are really struggling with feeding a household of family members with differing preferences or maybe with very sensitive palates. Well, tonight I am making what I consider to be sort of a quintessential picky eater approved meal. We're having baked chicken tenders with some mac and cheese and some green beans. So I thought this might be a good opportunity to talk a little bit about this and hopefully give some ideas and some encouragement. I do want to say that I am not speaking specifically to sensory issues or to any kind of medical diagnoses that require a specific diet. I'm talking about just picky eaters in general, you know, especially kids or people who just have a very, very narrow palate, and how we can address that and hopefully expand that palate just a little bit. I am going to prepare these chicken tenders two different ways tonight, and I'm getting them ready by getting them into a brine. So I'm taking the tenders and I'm putting them into another container with about 6 or 8, 4 to 6 cups of cold water, just enough to cover them, and about a tablespoon of kosher salt. You could skip this step if you want. I just find that it makes the chicken more flavorful and tender when I cook it. And I'm making the chicken two different ways. I'm going to make it just like a really plain seasoned baked chicken, and I'm also going to make kind of a breaded chicken tender. And that's actually one of my first pieces of advice. If you can think of ways to vary the menu, if you can think of ways to offer options on the menu without it creating a whole lot of extra work. Because one thing I don't want to be is a short order cook. So I don't want to be making completely different meals. But if it's not that much extra work for me to season something a little bit differently, or for me to make a side dish just a little bit differently, then I would probably do that if it meant that everybody gets fed and there isn't any fuss about it. I have a little medium-sized 4-quart crock pot here, so I'm going to use this for my green beans tonight, although I have done this on the stove and just simmered them for about an hour or so. But the slow cooking with everything else is, I think, what makes them be really tasty and really tender. So I'm putting in 3 cans of green beans, and I'm using no salt added. But I know a lot of people are concerned with the sodium content in canned vegetables, but I have found that there are a lot of name brands that are making them in no salt added varieties, and also a lot of store brands, especially in my Walmart and my local grocery store Reese's, they carry no salt added of at least the basic vegetables like corn and peas and green beans. I'm going to throw in 3 tablespoons of butter and 3 teaspoons of seasoning. So I'm going to use 1 teaspoon of garlic powder, 1 teaspoon of onion powder, and 1 teaspoon of salt. I'm just gonna stir that around a little bit to make sure that those seasonings get down in there. I'm gonna pop the lid on and just let these simmer on low until we're ready to eat later on. We ate a lot of canned green beans growing up, because growing up in a family of 7, I'm the 4th of 5 children, my mom discovered that everybody in the family liked or at least tolerated green beans, so she often made just plain out of the can green beans to go along with the dinners. And I have learned to like fresh green beans and frozen green beans prepared various ways as I've become an adult. But as a child, I really like the canned green beans just because I think they're softer. The texture is just different. But if I say anything about vegetables and what my personal philosophy is about feeding vegetables to my family, it's that I don't feel like my family needs to eat all the vegetables. I just need to find a few that they will eat or at least tolerate. My kids like steam in the bag broccoli with just a little bit of Parmesan cheese over the top. Obviously, they'll eat green beans prepared several different ways. They like asparagus, especially when I take the time to prepare it appropriately and blanch it and then saute it or roast it with a little bit of oil and salt and pepper. One of my go-tos, especially in the summertime, is just putting out a plate of raw vegetables for everybody to munch on at dinner time, because my kids really like carrots and cucumbers and celery, especially with a little bit of dip or ranch dressing on the side. So essentially, over the years, I have been able to just test out different vegetables and discover a few that my family will like. And occasionally, I'll try again with one that they didn't like to begin with, because a couple of years can make a big difference when it comes to our palates. So I'm not really worried that my family won't eat Brussels sprouts, even though I really like them and make them for myself, because there are so many other vegetables they will eat, and I just focus on those. Even when they were little, it was just about discovering one. If I could find one vegetable that they eat, hopefully that is a gateway to other vegetables. You might be surprised to discover the number of comments I have received on my channel over the years expressing shock at the fact that my kids eat their vegetables and how many different vegetables and how much of their vegetables they eat on a daily basis. And I really contribute that to a couple of factors. One that we've already talked about, just trying a different variety of vegetables, keep reintroducing those vegetables, because sometimes if they don't like something at first, they like it later, and then just landing on a few that they will eat. But another big factor that I think has contributed to my kids learning to eat their vegetables is the fact that my husband and I model that for them. And I have learned just recently, actually, in the last few years, that niceness is telling people what they want to hear, but kindness is speaking the truth in love. And I'm about to speak a very inconvenient truth, but I believe it. And I think it's a little bit of tough love that just needs to be said. If there are adults in your household who refuse to eat their vegetables for no other reason than that they don't like them, they're just being obstinate and stubborn, then I'm sorry, they need to grow up. They need to grow up and set a good example for the other people in the household, because it is very, very difficult to convince kids to eat their carrots, to try that broccoli, to try a bite of that asparagus that you made, if they don't see it on your plate and the plates of the other adults in the household. So again, I know that that probably isn't what you want to hear, and that some people are going to have a very ruffled feather reaction to that, but I don't know what else to say except to simply say it. We need to set a good example for the kids in our household and for the other people that we're preparing the food for when it comes to the vegetables. I took my chicken tenders out of the brine and I just laid them on a paper towel on top of a cutting board, and then used another paper towel to pat them dry. Then I dumped out the rest of the brine, and in that same container, I cracked 2 eggs and whisked those with a couple tablespoons of milk. In a Ziploc bag, I tossed about half of the chicken tenders with about half of a cup of flour, and then I placed those chicken tenders into the egg wash in the container. I dumped the rest of the flour out of that plastic bag and put into it half a cup of breadcrumbs and half a cup of grated Parmesan cheese, just the plain old stuff that you buy in the green canister that you sprinkle on top of your spaghetti or your pizza. And now I'm just placing those onto a cookie sheet that I lined with foil and that I sprayed with a little bit of nonstick spray. Can you tell that I didn't want to do a bunch of dishes, because I managed, instead of using multiple bowls for this process, to use just one plastic bag that can go in the trash and one container that I'll have to wash. But Mindy, you still had chicken left. What did you do with the rest of it? Well, with the rest of the chicken pieces, I just put them on the cookie sheet alongside the breaded chicken tenders, and I sprinkled them with an all-purpose seasoning. I used some Auntie Nono's grilling seasoning this time, but I've used just seasoned salt. I have used my own blend of paprika and garlic powder, onion powder, salt, and pepper. I've used a Cajun seasoning before, just whatever I'm feeling in the moment. And what this does is create a couple of different options for us with where the chicken is concerned, a couple of different flavor profiles, and even some different textures there with the breaded versus the non-breaded. So we have some options without creating very much extra work for me. Now, just a little bit more tough love here. Gosh, I hate being the bad guy. Years ago, when it came to picky eaters, and when I was deciding how I was going to feed my family as we had kids, and I was kind of diving headfirst into that season of our lives when I'm preparing meals for multiple people and multiple taste preferences at varying ages, I had to kind of ask myself this question: am I catering to appropriate reasonable preferences, sensitivities, and aversions, or am I enabling a bad habit? So let me give you an example of this in our household. My kids come home from school and they are hungry and they want to eat a snack. And what I've noticed lately is that they want to eat a lot of snacks. And I noticed that they were not eating their dinner. They would get to dinner time and they wouldn't touch their vegetables. They'd maybe eat a few bites of their main courses, and then I would have a ton of leftovers to put in the refrigerator and be wondering, why in the world am I standing in the kitchen making dinner if my kids aren't going to eat it? Because I personally am not a fan of making my kids eat when they don't want to, but I know they're hungry other times of the day. So what I did was actually stop purchasing a whole lot of chips and crackers and cookies and bars and even, you know, the healthier quote unquote options that I was including in the pantry that they were just filling up on when they got home because it was easy. Instead, I still have fruit and vegetables. We have some yogurt. You know, we have a few snack options for them, but they're the kinds of things that they're not really going to binge on. They're not just going to keep going back for more of those things. They're going to eat just enough to kind of stave off their after school hunger, and then they're going to be ready for their dinner. So even though I thought I was being helpful by offering options for them and making them independent and preparing some of their own snacks and meals, I was offering so much to them that they were choosing those things, filling up on those snacky items instead of eating their dinner when dinner time actually rolled around. And by addressing that habit and not enabling it by continuing to purchase those items, they have now gone back to actually, you know, having an appetite at dinner time, eating their dinner, and if they're still hungry afterwards, we can talk about bedtime snacks then. I know that can be a very tough thing to hear, and believe me, I have been there before. I have been the tired mom coming home from work at the end of the day, just trying to get something together to eat for my family, and then have my kids refuse to eat it, and then demand a bunch of snacks, then go ahead and give them the goldfish crackers because it's just not worth the fight at the end of the day when I'm exhausted. I have been there. I am just trying to give you a little bit of encouragement that it can get better. It does get better. Sometimes it takes a little bit of effort, but I was able to turn it around in my household, and quite honestly, I was able to turn it around for myself because I was a picky eater also. As a kid, there was an entire year where I ate basically chicken noodle soup. That's what I wanted to eat all the time, was Campbell's chicken noodle soup. And look at me now, eating all of the vegetables and all of the proteins and experimenting with lots of different recipes. So it can change. Maybe it's not the right season for it now, but hopefully this is a seed of encouragement that I'm planting for somebody out there. I read several years ago that children have more taste buds than adults, and that's why their palates are so sensitive. And while I don't know if that's true, I don't know if there's any science to actually back that up, I think we can all agree that children tend to have more discerning palates. It's why they don't care sometimes for strong flavors like spicy things or overly sour things or certainly bitter things, and why really plain foods like pasta and mashed potatoes and macaroni and cheese can be total taste explosions for them when they tend to be pretty bland for us adults. So one of the tricks for me has been how to take, you know, a standard kind of picky eater approved food like mac and cheese or mashed potatoes or pasta, and also make them palatable for those of us who have a little bit more adventurous palates. So I am going to make mac and cheese to go along with the dinner tonight. I'm going to show you how I'm doing that, and I'm going to try it using the viral TikTok hack. And I actually don't have TikTok. Anytime I find viral TikTok recipes, it's usually through Pinterest, just saying that it was viral on TikTok. So I am, you know, taking them at their word. But I'm going to make just the very basic, you know, mac and cheese. I'm gonna just give it a little zhuzh, if you will, by making it all in one pot without having to drain it using that TikTok method. But then I'm gonna take it over the top. You know, I'm gonna add some things to it. I'm gonna upgrade it a little bit for those of us who like, you know, just a little bit more flavor and a little bit more spice with our mac and cheese. Let me show you. I am doubling the mac and cheese tonight. So into my big skillet, I'm gonna use a big skillet because the extra surface area is gonna help this cook even faster. I'm dumping 2 boxes of plain old mac and cheese, 2 tablespoons of butter, 2 cups of water, and my 2 cheese packets. Yes, I'm putting those in right now. I'm gonna turn the heat on, and I'm gonna turn it on high because I wanna bring this to a boil, and I'm gonna stir all of this together until the cheese sauce is combined with the water and the butter is melted, and until the water is almost absorbed by the pasta. I have stayed pretty much right here with it while the pasta has been soaking up all of the water and simmering here on the stove, and it has only taken a couple of minutes for it to absorb the water. So now I'm gonna pour in 2 cups of milk, and I'm gonna let it simmer for just another couple of minutes until the pasta is done cooking. Then I'll turn the heat completely off and let it sit for a few minutes while the sauce thickens. Now at this point, I'm going to remove some of the mac and cheese just as it is right now to a separate bowl or plate for my picky eaters, because they're the ones who like just the plain old, box mac and cheese without anything else added to it. For the rest of us, I'm gonna upgrade what's left in the pan by adding a little bit of paprika and maybe a little bit of extra salt and pepper. You can add whatever seasonings you think your family might like. And then I'm gonna throw in some pepper jack cheese. And when I plate this up, I'm also going to serve it with a little bit of crumbled bacon and some chives on top for those of us who want the mac and cheese upgrade. So this way, my kids who like just the plain old mac and cheese are getting that, but the rest of us are getting something a little bit extra. Now for this meal, I'm actually making a protein option, a starch option, and a vegetable option, and I'm serving them all separately. They're not all mixed together in like a casserole or a soup, because I know that sometimes that is a sticking point with picky eaters. But another way that you can do this is by thinking of meals that you can serve bar style or build your own style, where you just put out the ingredients and all of the options for a particular meal, and then everybody can pick and choose what goes on their plates. And I came up with a list of about 10 or so different options that could be turned into a build your own or bar style meal pretty easily. Things like salads, or baked potatoes, or sandwiches, including grilled sandwiches, like if you wanted to have a grilled cheese bar where it's bread and cheese, but you could also add proteins in it like lunch meat or vegetables like tomatoes or different spreads like pesto. You can also serve pasta bar style, where you have a pasta option and maybe even a pasta alternative like a spaghetti squash or a zoodle, and then you have a sauce option and you have a protein like ground sausage or shredded chicken, and then you have different things that you can top it with, like different kinds of cheeses or red pepper flake for a little bit of kick. Pancakes and waffles lend themselves well to this, as do egg scrambles and omelets. Chili is another option that I think works well here, because not only can you offer different things to put on top of the chili like sour cream and cheese and chives, you can also offer different options for putting the chili on, like baked potatoes or cornbread or rice or Fritos or tortilla chips. And speaking of tortilla chips, nachos, burrito bowls, and of course, one of the best bar style meals of all time probably is tacos, right? That's really definitely a build your own meal. But in fact, it's one of my son's favorite meals, walking tacos, where you actually build the taco inside of a bag of tortilla chips or nacho chips like Doritos or corn chips like Fritos. Now, we actually do like our foods mixed together sometimes in this household, as you know if you watch my channel, because I do share casserole recipes and crock pot recipes and soups and stews. And some of our favorites include my mom's cheesy chicken spaghetti or her 4-ingredient chicken and rice recipe. Just the other night, I made one of our favorite one-pot meals. It's a spicy ramen that uses just some ground beef and some ramen noodles and some pantry staples like brown sugar and soy sauce. And I like it because it comes together in just about 15 minutes. So it's a great, easy, quick meal for busy nights. Every time my kids go to their Grammy's house, they ask her to make her meatballs, which is just frozen, fully cooked meatballs tossed in a slow cooker with a cup of grape jelly and a cup of barbecue sauce. That's it. They just think that they're magical, and they will eat those until they are gone. In fact, if you want some written versions of the things that I made in this video, and also some of the things that I just mentioned, follow the link in the description box for a free printable. That's right, I'm giving this away for free. Instead of doing a giveaway where only a handful of people win, like a gift card or something like that, I wanted to give all of my viewers something for free. So I put together some of the recipes that I've mentioned just now, and also typed out the directions for what I made in this video. And I have left a link in the description box. All you have to do is follow that link and then declare the price as $0, and you can get that little mini cookbook for free. All of the recipes that are included in it will be be listed in the information on the website. And a lot of them are things that I have shared here before, and maybe a couple of them are even included in other cookbooks. But I tried to think of the things that my family really likes and things that I keep making on repeat and share them with you guys there so that you can have, you know, a free resource. Hopefully there is something there that is useful for you, and if it's not, then I guess at least you're not out any money, right? The chicken is done. Mine took about 20 minutes total. I did turn the broiler on for the last couple of minutes to crisp up the top of the breaded chicken tenders, but they look and smell amazing, and I used my thermometer to check that they are done cooking. I may never look at a box of macaroni and cheese the same way ever again. This is probably my go-to way of making it. Chicken, good. Mac, good. Green beans, good.
Jam, good. Meat, good.
Don't forget to grab that freebie cookbook in the description box below. Pick out one of these videos to watch next. I'll see you there.